Vaishnaveभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Shastakam. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhavamaha dagni nirvapanam Shreyakaya chandrika vitaranam Vidyavadu jivanam Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam Purnamrita swadanam Sarvatma snapanam param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Namakari bahudani sarva shaktis Tatarpita niyamita smaranena kala Etadrishi tava kripa bhagavan namati Urdhaivami drishami hajaninanuраga Srimadapi sunichena taroriva sahishnana amanina manadena Kirtaniya sada hari Kirtaniya sada hari Kirtaniya sada hari Dhanam na janam na sundare kavidam vajaganisha kamaye Mama janmani janmanishware bhavat bhaktir ki kari Ainanda tanuja kinkara Patiyam mam veshame bhavam budao kripaya Tava pada pankajastithaluli sadrisham vichintaya Yugayitam nimeshena chakshusha pravishayitam Shunyayitam jagat sarvam Govinda virate name ashtishava padarakam penashtamam Adushanan marmahatam karotu va Yatata bhavilatatulam pato Martananatastu sarivana para Martananatastu sarivana para Martananatastu sarivana para. Skipped a verse, didn't I? Luckily, Baba Grahi Janardana. Nayanam galadashudaraya Vadanam gadgadarudhaya gira Pulakair nichitam bhapukada Tavanam agrahane bhavishyati. So, we're trying to reclaim our ideals, rebuild our ideals, discover our ideals for the first time. This has been such an amazing experience, just being here, being in the process we were the last 2 days. And so, coming to this point, it was really difficult to know what to talk about because there were so many different things to talk about, and what we had planned this retreat to be went out the door at the orientation session. So this was going to be a talk about the idea of love and kind of a presentation of what that means in a more like presentation format, and that just went right out the door, and now we're doing circle work. And so what I want to talk about today is the idea of Sankirtan, reclaiming our ideals, talking about what Sankirtan is, and because that's a big word, and it's on all of our foreheads. Really, is the Sankirtan movement, and we all say, "Yeah, I love Sankirtan. You know, I love Kirtan." But just kind of going into kind of a rediscovery what that means. I've had some experiences in the last months that have changed what that word means for me, and I'm really pleased to see that just kind of manifested here. It's pretty amazing, and thank you, Jai, for bringing that. It was your typical style that you came in and you said, "Yeah, I haven't been briefed. Actually, I didn't even know I was going to speak here." And then you brought big medicine, and you're like, "We're gonna do this exercise," and that turned into 8 hours of intense circle work, orchestrated the right way. And yeah, I feel very blessed to be with you all. I also feel, I think it's a little good, but I feel quite inadequate to be here in front of you speaking, but it's also a circle, so I'm not really in front of you, it's just a perspective thing. But so, Sankirtan and ceremony, talking about ceremony. Lightning.
Good one. Call and response.
Good one. Good one. Ooh.
Thus shall it be.
So ceremony. I felt for the last 6 months, a year, a sort of emptiness in the practices that we have as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and particularly I went through a bit of a letting go of Kirtan, because for me Kirtan was musical instruments for a long time, just being honest. That's what it was, and that was a good phase. I needed that. I needed to interface with it in that way. But I kind of had to let that die because I realized that was hell, just going to the Thursday night Kirtan wherever it's happening, or to any Kirtan, and just trying to be a musician, and not even being a very good one, but being good enough to have the idea that is what it is. And so recently I've had some really groundbreaking experiences to redefine what Kirtan is and to actually take part in it. And so I just want to kind of put the spotlight on some of what happened here and how we may redefine Kirtan in that light. Because it's my conviction that what we did here this weekend is real Sankirtan. And when we say samyak, which means complete or together, group Kirtan, I think that's Sankirtan. And I think there's a need, and it's really good to be able to speak about this after we did it, because I'm not giving a preface. I think we all experience that there's a need for a really powerful container to be able to bring ourselves into, so that we can do real Sankirtan. And so a clear ceremony. Jai gave us this, and I loved how you just kind of winged it also, because that's part of the magic of circle work and of Sankirtan, is just giving some sort of a formula to how we're going to do the ritual and bringing the holy name there. And I would say, not more importantly, but at least as important to the primary part of the practice, which is the chanting or whatever Gaudiya part is there, is the bringing of ourselves to the process. And I think that's what most of us are crying and dying for, and suffering in silence. And so I just want to highlight how powerful that is. It's redundant. I don't need to say it. We all felt it. We all were on the verge of tears for hours and hours. And multiple of us just wanted to get up and walk out of the room because it was too darn intense. but couldn't go because it's also so medicinal. It's such a balm, actually, to experience it. So talking about Sankirtan in this context, that a very tight ceremony that allows us to really bring ourselves and to hold space for ourselves, for each other rather, to bring ourselves and to hold space for each other and to allow each other to actually enter in, because it's just so easy to hide. One thing Maharaj and I were talking about is this, the quip that came up in the podcast was getting away from being performative so that we can become transformative. Because what often happens in ritual space, in the space of our kirtans, in our temples, in our gatherings, is that because we feel like we need to fit in, we don't bring our actual selves in to the ritual. And so putting emphasis on, not everything can be like this, although maybe everything could, but there still need to be some public, we're not going to focus on each individual programs, but having rituals that allow people to fully set into the space, having a component, I think is so powerful of saying, where are you at? Or we want to hear your story, giving people an in to walk through the door and say, this is who I am and where I am, so that they can just feel the relational connectivity in that, and the ability that this is a group of people that I could actually sit in a room with. I don't have to do the same old yeah, hi, oh, so good to meet you. You're so nice. So you're a good drummer. You're a great singer. That was really amazing. Just really getting to the bare bones. Oh my God, I recognize that you're going through a lot, and that's beautiful, and I can relate with that. And so, I'm not really doing so well at finding a common thread here, so maybe Maharaj can save me. Like I said, I'm not in my public speaking phase. But creating spaces where we can kind of tap into the vulnerability that we so deeply crave to share, so that we could actually be ourselves and transform. That's what I feel is the need of the hour, and I think that's what real Sankirtan is coming together and being ourselves. Because one thing I was thinking is, how can I worship God if I'm not me? So if every time I step into a space where I want to worship God, so to speak, if I want to go and I want to chant God's name, or I'm going to come together, I'm going to do some puja, if every time I come into a space I feel like, oh my God, I need to stay out there. Because if these people found out who I am, if these people found out what I'm going through, if they find out what kind of a mess I am, that I won't even be allowed back in here, then how much can we say that's going to be worship? And I appreciate the idea that, well, God can get through in any way. Krishna can get through in any way, but at the same time, in my experience, that often just becomes a way to say, be convenient, we don't need to hear about your problems directly, God will figure that out, just come here and do the thing. And one thing I've observed, mostly in myself, because I'm the only one that I can actually see, but I've talked to people about this also, is we come together for our rituals, and they're not tight. We don't know why we're doing them. We know that we should do them. We know that we're kind of gathering to do a thing from this time to this time, and things are supposed to happen, but deep down we don't really believe anything's gonna happen for us, because we've done this so many times, and it's I don't know. Something that was nice, yeah, I'm still doing it. And then people just kind of soft quit on their inner life, but then they front, and they're like, well, no, but yeah, this is great, I love this, I live for this is the best thing ever, and that we tell each other all these things. But I found in myself a lack of belief that I could actually have an experience. And one thing, yeah, I'm just in the tangential place, so I'm just going to talk, if you guys can stomach that. But one thing that I realized, I lost my train of thought. What was the last thing I said?
The performative,
you can't stomach
it.
How to trust that some transformation will be when you go thinking it won't happen.
So I don't, yeah.
Empty ceremony.
Empty ceremony. I don't believe that I'll transform.
Yeah.
Soft quitting.
That you could actually have an experience.
That I could actually have an experience. You guys are awesome, by the way. This is a testament to the fact that, like, I would be having, like, if I were sitting in a normal situation, I would be having an existential meltdown right now. I would be grabbing for a verse that I could then bail myself out with. And anyone who's given classes, you've had that. Yeah, you've had that experience where you're just like, oh my God, everything I planned is done. We need to just life raft right now.
I am the CEO having a
You're doing great, buddy.
So,
You were talking about shallow interactions and how that's not what, like, we're all supposed to get together and do this thing, and we know we're supposed to be doing this thing and feeling these things, but we're not actually. We're just in this shallow experience, and that people tend to soft quit instead of just being real with each
instead
other.
of believing
we
that.
know what we're really
I got it. You're right, thank you. So, one thing that I realized is that there's some wisdom in learning that transformation won't happen overnight. And that's a definite stage of spiritual life that we all go through. There's wisdom in learning that it's like, okay, I've got to be in it for the long haul. It's not going to be an easy journey. But the other side of that wisdom is a huge crutch in the lack of belief that it could happen quickly. In the lack of belief that something will happen to me, because I've had to learn for so many years, like, it's going to take time. And so what I'm realizing is coming back to a naivety and an openness, permanent openness, an openness to the idea that we could really transform tonight. We could transform in the Kirtan we do after this. I don't know if we're going to do Kirtan after this, but we could really transform in the ceremony. And so crafting deep ceremony. Crafting, deep is not a very good word. Intentional ceremonies. Starting them intentionally. Getting people on board with them, into them. Letting people be themselves in them. And then having this openness that something could actually happen for me. Yeah, I think that this is really important. And it was bringing me to another point, but I'm losing it again. And it's actually really good for me because I'm not, like I said, I don't feel like I'm going to die.
Say something about permanent openness.
Permanent openness.
What does it mean? Some connection with surrender?
When we were talking...
You're starting podcast dynamics now.
He's saving me.
Welcome to the Free Radical podcast.
We did so good there.
The Hare Krishna #2 podcast in the world. Just in case.
Is it Hare Krishna?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Permanent openness. I think that,
That's a belief that we could change, that there's a possibility we can be transformed in that experience.
Yeah, coming to a belief that could actually happen. And maybe you go, Maharaj, because I'm lost, but I don't feel like I want to die, so I think it's a success.
Well, we can go back and forth. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like it's you, now me, and that's over. We can keep the podcast dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So whenever you feel like saying something, you just...
I will.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Ujjvala Prabhu ki
Jai.
Right.
Openness to jai.
I was hoping you would elaborate more on what you were saying in the kitchen, actually.
What was I saying in the kitchen?
Deva Madhava about, well, I guess we were all talking. How that there's this need for us as a community to live in these groups, to help each other shoulder the burden that we're each living through. That we can commune with one another and be connected in that way through our own suffering.
Yeah.
communion, community.
Yeah, that's a little bit what I was saying earlier, in that we have a need to just be seen by each other in our pain, and to be seen by each other in the mess that we have in what we're going through. We have a need to have space held for us and to hold space for other people, because somehow, I don't know, I feel lost right now. I think the medicine for me right now is to fail at this and be okay with it. It's not there.
No failure, no failure.
The last thing you were saying was that under social pressure, we start losing hope that any transformation will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, can I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah.
So, I deeply connect with this thought because I've seen many young devotees show an enthusiasm, and that enthusiasm get doused when they are in like a certain sangha of senior Vaishnavas. So I was wondering, like, how does one protect oneself from being doused, when one has enthusiasm? Because I succinctly remember, like, a couple of years ago, feeling like, oh, I don't have any faith in ISKCON, the institution, and that's eroding my faith in Srila Prabhupada. And I was like, why is that happening? Like, why do I not want to hear from Srila Prabhupada or read his books anymore? And part of me, like, after some journaling, realized, actually, I'm listening to certain personalities who are saying things about Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada said that also, that kind of thing, and they're doing it from a space of non-conviction, and that is hurting my faith. So I have to just stop listening to them.
I think you answered your question pretty good.
No, I was like, how does... it seems like under social pressure we collapse, like our faith. We start believing the fact that we can no longer, like, feel some transformation. So I'm trying to understand how does a sadhaka protect that?
In the context of what you said, then I think it's tremendously important to get around people that you can actually look up to, and that actually help light a fire in you. You're talking about being doused. If you're being doused, then if we don't have a personal example, it's also hard because the dousing might be necessary in some cases. But if we're taking it that this is a negative dousing and it's a loss of enthusiasm that's happening perpetually, then I would say that that's God's hand in someone's life telling them maybe you should look for, maybe this isn't your group of people. Maybe your inspiration will come from elsewhere. That's the most I can think of. The satsanga principle is that we need to get around people that share our ideals. That, coming back to kind of what you were wanting to hear about, Brooke, we need to be around people that will hold us, and that we're also willing to hold. We need to be willing to hold the people around us, and we need to be around people that will hold us. And so, I think the most necessary thing. I have so many. God, in any other context, I could speak about this for hours, and somehow all my words are just leading me.
Would you also want to speak about your experiences of Sankirtan? You start the thread with that, but some of that never.
You mean with the ceremonies?
Yes.
I definitely wanted more light, but this is...
It's very mortuary lighting.
Or you want to come back to it later?
Yeah, we maybe can come back to that.
Okay.
So crafting ceremony so that we can all really, we just really need to drink. First and foremost, we need to have an experience, and we need to get around a group of people that we can do that with. And yeah, I'm just at a loss for words right now. Maybe it's because it's been so intense. That 4-hour session maybe took more than I thought from me, because I am just like, oh my God. But again, I'm really happy, actually. I just want to thank each one of you for being here and for, They're holding me in some way. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal for me. I'm quite a socially anxious person, and I don't feel tremendously anxious right now. Just feel like I don't really have words. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe, Maharaj, if you speak some ideas, then that'll light my fire, and then I can run off the steam of my big brother here. Okay. Sorry.
No, don't say sorry. It's okay. We are holding space for each other always, whether silence or not silence. Remember, we had a meeting recently where I was the one who didn't have anything to say for a while, so we take turns. It's okay, right? There's always silence speaks for itself, and Krishna says, "Of all secrets, I'm silent." So we are taking shelter in Krishna when we don't have anything to say. Yeah. Before the meeting, we were talking with Ujjvala Prabhu in the room about what to talk. Maybe we talked too much in that room, and now we run out.
That normally helps tremendously.
Because in the room was very dynamic. It was like I was joking with him. We'll put a hidden camera, do a second podcast without you knowing we are recording. It was one thing after another, right? So we exhausted our content. Just in case I run out of words now. Not usually quite a parrot, but let's see. So, some elaboration of what you were saying. I don't know. I really appreciate your... He came with me with a proposal, let's talk about Sankirtan. Because again, just basically the words, if you want, like unlike all these main words we have in our tradition, the more you use a word, the more meaning it loses, the more it becomes a word, and it just becomes devoid of all the substance that the very term indicates. Sankirtan, which is like collective celebration, like group celebration, group sacrifice, Sankirtan, Yajna. As we were talking today also, like the very name, the very definition, the very name of our main practice, Sankirtan, implies we need each other to do this. I cannot do Sankirtan by myself. My play of words is by myself. I can do Sankirtan. Sankirtan, I need all of you. And not only just physically, but quality of presence, right? Like investment of your will, as you say, intention. And that creates Sankirtan. And Sankirtan even can happen without musical instruments also. No? We were also recalling how when Rupa Goswami describes the main examples that attain perfection or show the perfection of each one of the main angas of bhakti, no? Parikshit Maharaj, Shravan, who for Kirtan? Sukadeva Goswami, but we never heard that Sukadeva Goswami was playing mridanga, kartals, but actually some other people was playing that, so he came back from the trance of speaking the Bhagavatam. It is described that Parikshit Maharaj had 7 days to live. So sometimes Sukadeva Goswami will go into Samadhi speaking Bhagavatam, and the days were counting, and Krishna Lila didn't happen yet in the narrative officially. So Parikshit Maharaj had the Kirtaniyas. They're like, okay, Kirtan. So Sukadeva Goswami returned. But his Kirtan was Harikatha. So my point with this is, okay, between Sankirtan, Kirtan, I mean, they are not that different. Between Kirtan, Harikatha, they are not that different. And when we talk about Harikatha, there are different forms of Harikatha. No, it's not that just Harikatha is, I don't know, let's read the Bhagavatam, let's read the Bhagavad Gita, let's tell Prabhupada Leelas. All that is Harikatha, but also the circle work we did today. That's Harikatha. High quality Harikatha.
Yeah.
So you can connect that Harikatha to Kirtan to Sankirtan, because Sankirtan is collective fire, let's say, collective introspection. That's how I define that in radical personalism, because it's Yajna means fire, and fire means introspection. Because Brahma here tapas, fire, and he turned inward. So Sankirtan Yajna means it's a collective effort with each one of us try to be introspective, try to enter the circle with a certain intention. No? And in that way, all together, we are creating safe space, sacred space, and And that protects us from not engaging in Sankirtan as a musical exercise. Right? Because Sankirtan can be musical or can be mystical. You choose the version of it. No? Performative, transformative. I mean, so many ways to frame the same thing. No? So I've been in both.
Yeah.
And I've been leading both. Well, probably more the mystical one. I wouldn't dare I lead mystical Sankirtan. But if we are open an instrument, as we're talking today with Ujjvala, so we have to, in one sense, I really appreciate what you mentioned, that on one side we have to have this like sober acceptance. Some things will take time to happen, but also at the same time develop this like implicit faith in, if I show up for Sankirtan with the right attitude, magic has to happen. It cannot not happen. Because showing for this type of circles with integrity and honesty will allow me to contact reality, how reality operates 24/7. It's not that grace may come or may not come. Grace is always there. The point is how much I'm showing up for contact in that reality. The magic of Sankirtan, the magic of healing medicine in circle is 24/7 available, but how much I'm showing up. No? As we were saying the other day, Krishna, where are you? And the echo will come, where are you? Just because you're asking this question, it means where are you? Because Krishna is everywhere, always, 24/7. So if you're asking that, it means where are you? So, in this way, Sankirtan has a lot to do with a joint teamwork in which all of us are entering into a particular fire, communal reflection and introspection, participating in this praise. And we have to cooperate with one another for that to happen. That's the beginning of love, cooperation. Because you were originally thinking about talking about love. And the ultimate Sankirtan is called Prem Sankirtan. That's what Chaitanya Charitamrita says. Chaitanyera Shrishti Prem Sankirtan. When Prataparudra Maharaj saw the associates of Mahaprabhu singing and rolling on the ground and crying, and he was like asking Gopinath Acharya, what's that? Because he never saw such a religious expression. And he was in Puri, he was a king of Puri, and in Puri there's lots of religious diversity, but he never saw something like that. So he asked, what's that? And he said, Chaitanya Shrishti. This is the creation of Sri Chaitanya, and it's called Prem Sankirtan. So ultimately we are about to engage in Sankirtan with Prem, but what's the beginning of Prem? Cooperation. And cooperation means, okay guys, we are entering into this circle, into this fire together. Let's cooperate. Let's put our agendas on one side. Let's put all our fears that take us to perform on one side. That basically what means leave your shoes outside of the temple. No? It's not just about external cleanliness. It's just a symbol of leave all that stuff that you walk on a daily, in a normal way. Leave that normal pace outside. We are entering sacred space here. We are disrupting your normal walking. So leave your shoes outside. Another walking is taking place. But you have to cooperate for that to happen. You have to be willing to, I'm entering into this place, willing to be disrupted, willing to, as we were saying, permanent openness. Today we find that word too. Since surrender may trigger too much unresolved trauma from generations, we have decided we will cancel surrender. We will not use that word anymore for the next 10 years. I will replace it for permanent openness. It makes sense, right? We say surrender is like, permanent openness. Not fully jive, can we return to surrender? At least I'm numbed for that word. When you say surrender, I don't feel anything. Permanent openness is like... But that's how we are supposed to show up, right? To show up in Sankirtan, to show up in Seva, to show up to each other. You were saying about this, we need to be seen. No? And the word for that in Sanskrit is darshan. basically. Darshan is not so much, let's look at the altar, appreciate the daily outfits. It's let's show up as vulnerably, as naked as I can, allow myself to be seen without putting opposition to that. And it's not just me in front of the altar, it's also me in front of each other. That's Guhyama Kyati Pichati also. That's darshan. We are having darshan of each other. We are being seen by each other and allowing that to happen. So that's a cooperation. It's expected from us. I mean, there is something to do. That's what makes me think when Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say, I remember the first time I heard that almost kind of, I was on the floor, but if I would be on a chair, I would go to the floor. He will say, Krishna is already giving us everything on a golden plate, but the only thing he's asking for us is a little bit of collaboration to accept the gift. Like some cooperation. Please take the gift. And take the gift basically means show up. Be open to the gift. Be yourself, as you say in the beginning, right? I cannot worship God if I am not who I am. So, as simple as that sounds, that's not so easy. But so yeah, I was inspired to think about vulnerability and how important is vulnerability to engage in Sankirtan. I mean, Mahaprabhu is the king of Sankirtan, but Mahaprabhu is the king of vulnerability as well. He's the God in his most vulnerable moment. Vulnerability generally is defined as uncertainty, emotional exposure, and risk. Whenever you feel those things, you are vulnerable. I mean, we are always vulnerable, but we have only the choice of acknowledging that or not. And Mahaprabhu was vulnerable. I mean, he was trying to experience Radha Bhav. That's risky. What will happen in such a project? Everything can happen. Emotional exposure. Wow, he's really exposing to her emotions. That's the ultimate emotional exposure. Uncertainty, again, no idea how it will turn out, what will happen. So he's the most vulnerable face of the Absolute, and the most volcanic one at the same time. And that makes him the king of Sankirtan, but he's leading by example. I'm the king of vulnerability. You want to join my Sankirtan? We have to be naked. We have to be vulnerable, like the Gopi Vastra Harana Lila. Krishna is taking all the cloth from the gopis and leaving them naked. And this is not some like pornographic sequence. It's representing this idea. And Krishna wants to see the beauty of the nakedness of the gopis. And one level of that is vulnerability. Come to me. Come to reclaim your stuff naked. And the gopis are coming, covering their intimate parts. And Krishna says, no. You bathed yourself in the Yamuna, that was aparad, so now you have to beg forgiveness putting your two hands on top of your head. But ultimately he wants us to present to himself with no shielding of any type. Just bird nakedness, vulnerability. Like implying, I already accept you as you are. You don't need to hide anything from me. The Bible has the same story with Adam and Eve, right? They are naked. And the first thing they feel is ashamed. They start to cover, to hide. We are terrified about showing up for who we are. So, but that's our contribution to the Sankirtan. Here I am. I'm showing up without masks, as much as I can, with a willingness to remain open and allow the circle to open all the things that haven't been opened yet. You feel inspired to say something.
Something.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's the natural way of things anyway. I think about the Gopi Vashtraharana Leela. Technically God could already see if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And like with all of us, he already sees everything. We're already naked. It's actually what they were called to, is to volunteer it. So I think about the purpose of human life, and I think about like circle ritual and Sankirtan in a ritual. It's an opportunity to consciously enact the place that we stand in the world. What's actually already going on, what's already happening. We're just stepping into the role that we're meant for. We're stepping into, in a conscious way, what's going on. because it's already actually going on. It's already happening. And so, yeah, around circle work, it's really like, God, it's so hard to speak about because it's hard for me to catch grounding, but it's like a rehearsal for the way reality already is. And to create a circle, to create a ritual, a very tight ritual, is just to practice basically being and working towards your ideal, doing the thing as it's supposed to be, so that when you go out into your life, when things are less black and white, you may have some chance to lean on that practice and see things as they actually are when there is no circle. And we don't have a center here, we have like an ideal center, and that's Nam. And we were all actually sharing around the center that is God, because every circle, like, what are we doing? We're all constellating around something. We're all finding our place around the center. That's the holy name. But normally you would erect an actual center so that it's a little more visual and you can see. And that's just a representation of the way the world is. That's a representation of what we're doing in a form that you can see and conceptualize. And we want to bear it all in front of God. We want to bear it all in front of Nam Prabhu. And we want to do it in a way that we have community. We find a community of people that also want to do that. Because the epidemic of this world is that nobody wants to do that. We don't want to do that. It's scary work. It's terrifying. I don't want to take my clothes off in front of a bunch of people. I don't want to take them off in front of God. But actually that's what I'm called to do, is to be stripped completely naked, and to find my place, and I have this deeply held conviction, it's my own feeling, that I just want to know where, I said this already, but where I belong. Like, where is my place in the circle in life? Like, where do I fit? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And I think all the great philosophers and novelists and whoever has written anything, it really boils down to, like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And what will be worthy? What am I worthy for? And what should I strive for? And so, when we do circle work, it's really this, it's a rehearsal to figure out how to do that. And we just have such a blessing with the conception that we have with Sankirtan, because we have it's a genius format. That's why it's the Yuga Dharma. It's the most genius format to constellate around divinity, to take our places, and to use our voices to glorify. Because that is also a very, very precise, it's literal, but it's also a precise metaphor for what we really want to be doing, and how we want to fall into our place, and we want to just, we want to be able to rest into where we actually belong. So I can't really do it justice right now, but
You can? Yeah.
I can't really do it justice right now, but I'm personally, I guess I'll just speak what's on the top of my heart. I just hope that everybody who's experienced what we experienced here in these ceremonies that we've had the last couple of days is inspired to not walk away and just say that was a nice experience, but that you take this experience and that you apply it somehow, somewhere, for the people in the place that you live, for your close friends, that you sit down and worship God and give people the opportunity to come in front of God and in front of you without judgment, so that they can do what needs to be done, what they crave to do. And that's why I believe this is Sankirtan. That's what Sankirtan is and what it means. And so my prayer, and I think because of the experiences people have had, I don't think I really need to pray for it, but I ask all of you, please take it if it's affected you and go forward, because this was a tremendous experience, and people need it. People really, really, really need it. They really need to be held. They really need to know that they're not inconvenient. They need to know that they're welcome. Because as spiritualists, as people that are on the doorstep, even identified with people that people are supposed to look to for something deeper and spiritual, people are going to take the way that they're treated as the way God is treating them. And so we have a duty in a kind, caring, loving way to make sure that they are able to come to the center, and the center means God, that they're able to come to the center and not feel judged. And so I'm personally very captivated by this style of ritual because it has been a light in my life in recent times. It's been, light is not a good enough word, it has been a reinvigorating tonic that makes me feel like spiritual life is worth it. It can be done. It's been a sanjeevani, a rasayana. It's literally been life-giving, and we have to do it. It has to be done, and it's the need of the hour. Everybody is completely taken by loneliness because of these things. This is a black magic box that is taking everybody's presence. It's not even funny. I know it's funny, but this is
And
really,
we laugh not to cry. That's all.
yeah, this is really bad. The way this takes everybody's attention, this is literally like, it's just the worst thing that you can imagine. And you're all just like, and we never have any presence, and we have no way to find it. And it's so convenient and nice and gives us ways to just not live our lives. We need ritual. We need ritual. We need an established center, and we have it in the tradition that we've been gifted. We have this. We have a very clear conception in a center. We have all of the pieces, and if we apply it in a way that we're not using it to hurt people and to whack people and tell them that they're wrong and bad and, philosophize and get lost in complexity and then tell people, well, it should kind of be like this. We need to feel, and we need to sing. We all just need to find our voices, and we need to sing, and we need to hold space for each other. That's really the message that's on my heart. And so we're trying to do that every Ekadashi right now. It unfortunately has to be done in a sizable group, as you guys saw, a small group, as you saw, because the sharing is really, really important. So if you do it, please don't make the mistake of putting it on a poster and inviting 40 people, because then everyone will feel I'm inconvenient and I couldn't possibly share my story. But it's super important. It's super important. It's what I have faith in. John?
This is a question, but I want to give a small preamble. This is in relationship to all the experiences, and specifically in relationship to something Bhakti Rasa, an image she gave us yesterday, an image I've heard before from Tamal also. The image was of the bat, calls out to the darkness, and if the sound doesn't return, then he would just free fall. And you were describing that was your experience, but you specifically told that in the context of the need for others, relations to reflect back, so that you can find your location in relationship to the center. So Sankirtan imagery, one of the images that was really important for me, has been important for me for the last 2-3 years, Rasa Leela, surprisingly, but specifically the gopis, after Krishna disappears because of their so-called pride, and they kind of go into the madness of what Umadhavan, I think the chapter 30 says, and then they kind of go into Tadatmya with Krishna. They kind of experience their oneness with God, and in that experience of their oneness with God, they begin enacting the Leelas, and then they begin singing while doing that. Like singing to the dark, because Krishna is there, but he's hiding his presence, and that's kind of how I reframed my sense of loss of like the process or my attraction to practices and so on. Is that Krishna is hiding himself from my japa, he's hiding from the Bhagavatam, he's hiding from the sadhu sangha that I was accustomed to, he's hiding from my darshan of the deity. So now I'm in the dark, and now I want to like cry out, and I am crying out, but there's a need for that to be reflected back, so I can find my location in relationship to my Krishna. So the gopis, they like cry out, the whole scene is there, and sometimes when they're singing, the other gopis are just witnessing their song. And upon witnessing, they'll, well done. I just have this one image of where one gopi does some trick, I think, with her sari and is imitating the Govardhan Leela, and the other gopis are very satisfied with this, and they say, well done, and they begin to applaud. And then they're just sharing like their song of grief. So also in relationship to the experience of yesterday, and what you all were mentioning, grief is like a very powerful Sankirtan. Something I realized between the difference between like Gaudiya Kirtans in general, they have like this sort of lament, feeling to them, like the sort of tunes that we tend to choose. Mm-hmm. And then you have like Hare Krishna, like major like kind of fun. And I've noticed in the West when we do the lament tune, like Western body people don't get it. They don't get it. They're like, why is this so sad? And whereas like Raghunath does like the more like happy, and then people are like, yeah, let's go. It's like kind of like a party. But one book, I'll share the phrase. Grief is the natural way that you praise the loss of something that you love. Mm-hmm. Yeah, grief, I heard, this is a sin, I'm repeating something. But grief is the natural way you praise the loss of something that you love. So in the context of the gopis, that imagery, they lost their Krishna. And so their song of grief is praise of the object that they love. And so kind of hearing all the different stories, like people are losing gurus, they're losing connection to their practice. And the fact that we're grieving it is a type of praise of what it was to us, and the loss of that something that we absolutely loved. Whether it was a guru, because when you hear the story, you can kind of receive it as like, oh, they might have animosity towards that. It's like, no, I love that. And now what you're hearing is the grief. You're hearing the loss of that. And it becomes like a Sankirtan that you're like calling out to the dark. God is hiding himself. I'm calling out to the dark with my song of grief. And now it's being received by the other Vaishnavas in the Sangha, and they're reflecting that back by sharing their own song of grief. And then it becomes like Sankirtan, like very emotionally impacting and absorbing. And I think Eric was saying, he was like, 4 hours went by like this. I was like, ready for more, just past the time. So that's my preamble. Like I was putting all these pieces together in relationship. And I kind of like want to hear about that. I really like that chapter. Chapter 30 and I want to hear the Sankirtan topic in that chapter. How they're a little bit. I mean, Marge, I know this was an absorption at one point. It can go on long. It doesn't have to be long, but I'm kind of maybe if you can take what I'm saying as like a catalyst and weaving all these elements together. The Sankirtan image, the ceremony, the circle. The need to like receive our songs of grief, and that also being Sankirtan.
In the past, you referred to that chapter also. I remember.
It's been a big medicine for me the last 2 years.
And of course, that the particular Tadadmya that the gopis exhibit there is kind of mysterious to understand, right? Because they behave like Krishna himself. But also the Bhagavatam makes it very clear that their love for Krishna is increasing while being Krishna, while enacting Krishna's Leelas. Their Krishna prem is increasing. So it's a particular form of Unmad or divine madness, basically. So far we can say something about it and try to explain it technically, how it reaches like that. But in connection to that chapter, of course, the 5 chapters connected to the Rasa Leela, there's, of course, to begin with, the obvious parallel between Rasa Leela and Sankirtan. We know that many times these Leelas in Gaur Leela are connected to some parallel Leela in Krishna Leela, and Rasa Leela is immediately connected to what's going on at Triva Sangam every single night forever. And Rasa Leela, of course, is called also in the Bhagavatam, one verse in Rasa Leela is called Rasa Goshti. Sometimes we use Ishta Goshti. From Ishta Goshti is, again, sometimes we also get the idea Ishta Goshti is a managerial meeting or stuff like that, and it's like, no, it's Goshti means we are reuniting around our Ishta. Around. Again, the center is established. and a reunion comes with that center properly established. And basically that's another way of saying Rasa Lila, Rasa Mandala. Because mandala means circle. And also in Sanskrit, in the Bhagavatam in particular, the idea of mandala also represents these symbols that are used as objects of meditation. So Rasa Mandala is something worthy of meditating on, this particular circle structure. So, yeah, for me the Rasa Lila, and in the book I'm writing now, I refer to that, how the Rasa Mandal kind of, again, represents this archetype for how reality operates in its normal level. Like there's a center and there is a circle around the center, and all the participants in the circle are committed to their participation in connection to the center, full invested, and celebrating. And Rasa Lila is, of course, there's grief, as you properly mentioned, but there is a form, it's a celebration. It's dance, there is song. There are reasons to celebrate, and then comes the grief, right? So there are reasons to grieve as well. Both of them are part of the Rasa Lila. Great love, and we were talking today, I don't know with whom at this point, but we were saying that both two main things that open our heart and keep the heart open are great love and great pain. Hey, this is a pattern of reality. I'm not making this up now. And that's why all of you are like, yeah. It's not like, no, Maharaj, I disagree with you. Great love, great pain, heart surgery. It keeps open, and when we are open-hearted, reality operates from as it is. We not only need Bhagavad Gita as it is, we need everything as it is, starting from us. So I appreciate that the Rasa Lila, which is for us like the all in all, so to say the ultimate archetype, includes pain, deep pain, as we said the other day. That pain compared to our pain is a joke in comparison to the pain of the gopis in separation of Krishna. So for me that's also an important point, that there is place for pain, there is place for grieving, as a form, I really appreciate your point, Jai, that if I'm grieving for something, I'm kind of praising what I've lost, because if I do not value what I lost, I won't be grieving. It's like I'm maybe celebrating the loss. Yeah, it's gone, finally. But if I'm grieving, it shows about the positive content of that. And so that's why grieving is so necessary. Although it seems externally as something tragic, or why you are grieving, but it's a form of positive appreciation and expression of love. Again, love moves in mysterious ways. So you can be grieving and crying, and actually you are shown how much you love that person. Like, for example, I was talking today with someone, again, I don't recall, sorry to bring it to a personal level, but I didn't mention that in a circle, I tried to simplify. But when I was talking about what I went through with my second guru, and I mentioned that was the most complex of all the chapters, because in one sense that person was the person I loved the most, and that person was the person that hurt me the most at the same time. And I loved the most because it helped me a lot, and I don't want to stop seeing all that. I want to continue being grateful and honoring that, but also there is abuse, and I don't want to stop seeing that either. So how do I continue seeing both things at the same time without one cancelling the other? That's not so easy, but that's kind of the integration that we need to bring, and that means allowed to see both things, and allowed to celebrate, but allowed to grieve. So for me, Rasa Lila in that sense is very powerful, because it gives this message that you can celebrate life and you can grieve as part of the celebration. It's not like something, again, like someone said today, you are lamenting for that which is not worthy of lamentation. That indirectly says there is something worthy of lamentation, and we want to lament for that. Yeah. There is a place for lamentation, there's a place for grieving, there's a place for crying, it's an eternal rasa, so to say. So that's how it plays out for me, like how we as sadhakas, wherever we are in our stage, can draw purpose and meaning from something like the Rasa Lila in a way that is relevant for us. No? And we can find, okay, that's a way I can participate in Rasa Lila now. It's not like unless I'm dancing with Krishna dressed as a gopi, I'm not participating in Rasa Lila. No, I can start to participate if I'm able to draw meaning and purpose that relate to my present station. And I think what you mentioned there is very valuable, that grieving is, and I remember we talked with Deva Mada in our podcast last year, sometimes the whole duty of a whole generation is just to grieve. Because that was not done enough for the previous generations. Okay, we take that duty on us. That's our dharma, generational dharma. No? But again, properly conceived, grieving is not depression, it's not resentfulness, it's not blaming, but it's a way of appreciating the loss, and by that process, a way of reclaiming what has been lost. No? It's a way of not losing fully what has been lost, but by appreciating what I've lost in one way, by appreciating that and grieving about that and keeping that present and alive with me, and I'm reclaiming my ideal, going back to our title. So grieving for me is a way of reclaiming my ideal. And I felt that, going again to my personal journey, and again that I didn't mention today, but when I had this loss with my second guru, I was like, okay, it's terrible, but okay. I realized that I felt relatively fine in the sense that Krishna provided so much shelter and mercy and inspiration. Like it was like unprecedented shower of shelter to compensate the loss. I mean, that was the only way. He knew without this he won't survive. So it was so overwhelmingly clear that I was not like going through that much of emotional. But eventually I realized, no, I need to be angry, I need to be bewildered, I need to be, and I need to grieve, of course. And by that grieving I felt I'm keeping in my heart all the positive things I received from that person. At the same time I'm making it clear what I don't want from that relationship, and it's toxic. So I'm like clarifying the landscape. But I need to grieve for that to happen. Because if I don't grieve, the landscape is not clear, and probably I will replicate the same pattern in time. So grieving is so much to clear the land, so to say, and move forward, right? And it may take time. The grieving may take time, and the gopis grieve considerably. I mean, the whole Gopi Gita is grieving. In one sense, but interestingly, that's what makes Krishna appear. and Jai, that's where Gaur Lila is born according to Sanatana Goswami. Naparayaham niravadya sanjaya. So, out of the grieving of the gopis, in Rasa Lila, Krishna comes back and says, "I cannot repay back to you. Let your love be your reward. But I'll try my best, and once in every day of Brahma, I come as a sadhu and try to sing your glory." So Sanatana Goswami said, this is a prophecy of Mahaprabhu's appearance in the height of Rasa Lila. So that's for me another connection of Rasa Lila and Sankirtan. Because Mahaprabhu is the father of Sankirtan Aiko Pitaro. And the whole Gaur Lila, though it's eternal, but somehow it's blossoming in that peak moment of Rasa Lila, which comes as a result of the gopis grieving in separation, grieving their loss, and Krishna witnessing that. And as we know, Krishna disappeared from the Rasa Lila ostensibly so the gopis' love for him could increase. So that's also interesting. The gopis are grieving, but they are grieving for Krishna's disappearance, and Krishna's disappearance is with the purpose of them increasing their love. And they are in fact increasing their love by grieving. So there is and when Krishna returns after the gopis grieving, he is described as manmata. What was the verse? Sakshan manmata manmataha. So he appears especially attractive. So to say, in one way we could say he witnessed the grieving of the gopis, and that make his reappearance and his presence unprecedentedly beautiful more than before. So that confirms the gopis' heart and love is way deeper, more than ever, and Krishna's beauty correspondingly now is more deeper, more than ever. And then what he has to say anticipates the coming of Mahaprabhu, so to say. So. But all that is the result of their sacred grieving, I think. And their grieving bring Krishna back in an upgraded version. Right? So in other words, when you grieve properly, the result of that grieving over your loss is that what you lost returns in an upgraded version. No? Because they were grieving Krishna's loss. Grieve properly, Krishna reappeared, upgraded, 3.0 now. So in the same way I will say when we grieve properly, what we are grieving that we lost will be reclaimed, will reappear, redeemed in an even deeper, bigger version. But the grieving is necessary for that upgrade to happen. That's what counts, I don't know, if that makes any sense.
Maharaj, it sounds like there you're using grief and separation like a synonym, because we hear service and separation constantly. But every time you're saying grief in that discussion, just transpose the word separation, as we see Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda saying again and again.
Yeah.
In some way, they're just saying serve in grief.
Yeah, and I would say that, of course, we cannot imitate the grief of, I don't know, Vilaka Sumanjali and things like this, but we have to find our corresponding grief. Like with any other thing, what's the humility that corresponds with the stage of my journey I'm in now? What's the surrender that is healthy for me to express in my stage? What should I be grieving for in my stage? No, I cannot imitate that grief, but how to enter into that separation grief stage in a way that is realistic to where I am, and understanding this is something that will invoke a more comprehensive presence of my deity as a result of that. Because those are the dynamics of eternity: union, separation, and you can say joy, grief, celebration, or like I remember when we were talking with Kamal, and he will say like inspiring hope and humbling failure. No? You can frame it in different ways, no? But these two are like necessary dynamics, and both polarities are like part of reality. It's not that I just want I'm a harmony junkie and I want my dopamine peak in Krishna consciousness. I want to be always like, oh, you saying yesterday, Jai Nectar,
Jai Nectar Bliss.
Jai Nectar. That was fun. Jai Nectar Bliss. So you can become addicted to Jai Nectar Bliss, right? But what Mahaprabhu came to teach, Mahaprabhu is Krishna, he's Acharya Lila, and he taught the way by separation. I mean, his tasting of Radha Bhav was by separation. No? So you have to enter separation, and that brings the union. And again, separation doesn't mean I will imitate and force tears, but I have to find the corresponding tears to my present stage, like you say. My corresponding lamentation, and again, grief in a healthy way. Again, not depressive, not self-centered, because we can easily go there as well. But to ask ourselves if there's something in my life that I need to grieve for, and I think if you are sincere, at least 5-6 things will come. But at least one, So grief, even if it's not absolutely related to Krishna and Leela and me separated, maybe some unresolved trauma from childhood. But you need to grieve that. If you don't need to grieve, that has not been solved. That circle is not a circle. So it's getting in the way, know it or not. So.
Somebody's grieving.
Raj Brooks had her hand for a while.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Just say something.
Couple things. The grieving, it wasn't until Dave Manava encouraged me to really I'm going to have to talk louder because I'm so loud. Just a little bit louder. I was saying that Deva Madhava has encouraged me to go through the process of grieving. Several things I've had to grieve over the last 3 years of knowing the devotees. And it wasn't until revisiting things I thought I'd already grieved that I realized that I hadn't really fully grieved. And that even maybe the layers of grief that I'm experiencing are what's really bringing me closer. But it's scary to admit that in a small group, because you're not really sure about the sincerity of those who are listening. And a lot of times I'm doing such a job on myself internally that I don't think I can take just one single word that would hurt my heart, because I feel this close to just disappearing. So how do you be authentic in a circle of people that you're not sure are your well-wishers? And I'm not saying that there's anyone in here specific. It's just sometimes I feel this overwhelming sense that I'm not living up to what you expect me to live up to, or you, and that I'm failing not only all of you, but myself eternally.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Brooke. And yeah, I think that's really the need of the hour. I think one thing that really makes the circle dynamic work is, practically speaking, nobody's allowed to respond. So nobody's allowed to throw a hurtful word at you when you're in the circle. Because actually, the whole exercise that we're doing is we want to speak to God. And we just want to get better at that. Because He's the one who can actually help. And He's the one who's trying to help. And He's the one that we're trying to cultivate an awareness of how He's helping, right? He's the one that we want to start to see. How are all of these things that are happening that are inconvenient in my life, how are they actually here to help me? And so, it's not exactly how we did the circle dynamic here, but the ethic is there, is that really we're speaking to the center. And then everybody in the circle, the ethic is that you're there to let the person go through whatever it is they're going through. And so knowing that I have a responsibility, knowing that I'm not the one who's here to give correction, actually, that the center is going to be the one who delivers the messages and the means, because I guess that's another part of the rehearsal aspect. That's how life is, right? We don't get direct answers. Hardly does somebody come and say, hey, this is where you're messing up, and even if they do, hardly do you listen to it. You're not going to say, yeah, thanks, that's great, I'll fix that now. God's smarter than that. He knows that we're stubborn, and so He comes in indirect ways. And so with the circle dynamic, you can take faith in knowing that I can be fully vulnerable here, because if it's a real circle, I'm not going to be criticized for what I'm going through. I'm not going to be criticized for my vulnerability. And I have faith that will be felt, and that any real vulnerability, any real coming to the center with the group of people will only create more connectivity, because it's really like you're watering the center of reality with your sincerity and with that vulnerability. I think vulnerability is really it's like the jet fuel for all spiritual practice. I think that God is basically doing an expert job of hacking away at whatever thing we think we have to hold on to that's not Him, so that we'll become fully vulnerable. And the one thing I recognize is that that's going to make a big mess. It's making a big mess for me. It's going to make a big mess for you. It's going to make a big mess for everybody. And the wisdom that I'm learning is that I need people to let me go through it, and I owe it to people to let them go through it. So, yeah. It's not an easy thing to answer because I can't speak for anybody else. Somebody may say, I don't like you, and I don't like what you said, and I think you're wrong in this way and that way, but at the end of the day, if they do that, they're probably hurting themselves more than they're hurting you. And again, in the context of the circle, it's literally not allowed. Like, it's not allowed. And here, there are people here, like, we just did that, and it was off the cuff. You know, and a lot of people that were involved weren't fully cognizant of the thing, but if anybody had gone in on somebody in their vulnerability, there were people in the room that were like, hey, we don't do that here. You don't give answers here. This isn't the place to dump on people and tell them you know. So, thank you for being vulnerable and saying that and asking. That's my answer. There it is.
Nice.
Did you have another one?
Did you have another one? Can I get used to this now? Evan.
I think we turn the lights off, turn that light on.
This is not going to be articulate.
It's alright. I set the bar really low. Don't worry.
That's worse. I guess I'm more resonating with grieving Krishna's presence, feeling like a spiritual darkness, and when I hear things like, I know that they're true, but hearing things like Krishna is present everywhere, and like I need to be present to him, like I'm trying to do that, and I'm trying to do that, and it's just not working. So it's like, yeah, I guess I don't really know how to frame this in a question, but I'm just more resonating like, yeah, Krishna's hiding his presence from the deity in my japa, and like my attraction, and bringing the loss of attraction to practice, and kind of expecting him to fix that because I want to be able to be present, and all the ways that used to work don't work. So yeah, I know it's like he's there, but it's, and I need to be there, but it's just not, something's not clicking. So I guess I don't know how to, please respond.
That's like Parashar Maharaj. You answer all the questions
Questions
that
I
I
made
asked,
and all
the
the
ones I didn't ask, you also answered.
Yeah, that's the smartest question. I really resonate, I think, with what you're saying. We've talked about this also. Somebody said something in a conversation the other day. I think it was you, Maharaj. I don't think you meant it this way, but you said, I just know. Like, I only know this. So it was in passing. I think it was you that said it. I'm taking it differently than you meant it. But it struck me that I just know. But what I'm realizing in my life is that I want to feel. I don't just want to know. Like, sure, my faith is situated in a certain way. I do know things in a sense, like I have faith that Krishna's in every atom, and then everything's in him. And it's like I have faith that he's moving my life in ways. And I've said this recently that I have hindsight faith, that I have really powerful experiences in my life I can look back on, and it's a no-brainer. Like some of the stuff I've shared about in the circles, it's a no-brainer. I was an idiot running in the wrong direction, and Krishna just was like, no, we're going to like this, and now you're good. And just totally saved me multiple times. Major hindsight faith. And the work is the present moment faith. And I realized that I have to aspire to that. And I want to aspire to that because I'm not satisfied with the knowing kind of faith. I only know that Krishna's everywhere, but I want to feel that. And I'm kind of like, we've expressed it, I think you expressed it earlier, and Davani expressed it, and it reminded me of this thing. Like, I'm kind of settled now with just being like, why aren't you making this more clear? Like, I'm stupid, please make it more clear. Not defaulting to like, oh, and I know in some concept, like I know it's supposed to be like this, and basically means I'm not that great, and you know, I've got to work harder, and you know, I'm just no longer going to emotionally shut off with that. It's like, make this easier. I'm trying in some way, and I know that that isn't intellectually the best way to go about it, and people could consider that, well, that's an aparad or whatever it is, but to me it's like it's either that, which is at least an attempt at connection, or it's shutting off. And I just don't want to shut off anymore. I don't want to deaden myself to God's presence in my life. And so I'm going to give him that, I'm going to treat it as sacred in some way, like that frustration. I shared the example of my work the other day, and I just said, I'm in a really fragile place, and this is hard, and now this weekend you had to make this harder on this day. Like, I can't handle that. And it seemed to have a good effect. It made things work. And I'm inspired by Jai, who for years I've heard say, like, I'm not that serious of a devotee. Don't even send me. Don't even send me stuff. And it's like, it's a sacred way of just relating and just at least having the conversation. And I think that relates a lot to, you know, the whole idea of coming as you are and being vulnerable. It's like, if I feel something, God already knows it. Krishna already knows it. So I may as well say it to him. At least then I'm bringing it to the forefront. And I'm reminded of this verse from the Rasa Leela chapters when Parikshit Maharaj is kind of amazed that the gopis don't know that Krishna's Brahman, and yet they still attained him. And Shukadev Goswami says, well, what do you expect? You can attain Krishna if you focus on him in any way. Anger, love, whatever it is. Just making the connection. That's what it means that Krishna is merciful, actually. You know, in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, just because the warriors saw him and looked at him, like, that's the difference between Krishna and everybody else, is that he's like, connect with me in any way. And I just feel stupid for not having got that. I feel a little angsty that wasn't shared with me earlier in a concise way. But I probably wouldn't have heard it either. But I definitely feel stupid for having kind of shut off, because it's like, well, I can only relate with Krishna and speak to Krishna if I'm this version of me, which is not me. It's a construct that I put in front of me to say, am I good enough? Will you relate with me? And then when he relates with me through the circumstances of my life, I just take it that it's punishment because I don't believe that I'm good enough. It's like, this is the common thread. It's definitely a major portion of my experience. And so, yeah, it's being a little angsty. I know you've already got that, Evan. It's good. I think it's good, yeah.
I hear it every day.
There's a verse in Padyavali for it. I love that there's a verse in Padyavali where this devotee literally says, you ran to Draupadi, you ran to Gajendra, you were so fast. Now I'm calling for you. Where's that speed? Rupa Goswami wrote this verse down, so it's you want substantiation. It's legit. Like, hey, what's going on here? Why are you messing up my work day when I'm trying to get to the program? Like, this is hard. I'm about to give up. You know?
Isn't that just actually prostrating yourself and begging him to just step in and do something? Essentially, it's prayer.
Yeah. I think anytime you talk to God, it's prayer for sure. I would say that. Even if it's not in like the most like anguished way. Like for me, like I said, angsty is the word.
Respectful.
It was very much. It wasn't very respectful.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
very like, this is not cool, man. This isn't cool. And then it worked.
One thing that I found helpful in relationship to this, I was speaking with Raj Jivan last night, and we were talking about, it's like, why is it, that kind of vexing question of free will and determinism, and Krishna has a plan, Krishna has his will. Why is it that I'm going to pray? I've heard it said prayer is not so that I can change the mind of God, but so I can change, which I accept and I appreciate. And then also the nature that Krishna is, he's Swara, he's also completely independent, so he can change his, if I show that I'm interested in something, he can also change the situation and change the circumstance. And he can also change me. And it could just be an alignment that I'm voicing, I'm stating, and then it's actually just in alignment with already what Krishna was desiring for me. But appreciating this mood of sincere candor with the Lord, that I'm just gonna say hey, what's going on? Where's the hustle? Where's the help? Where's the support? One kind of in a similar vein, but one thing I've seen my Guru Maharaj do, he'll make a prayer, he'll make a request, and then at the end of the prayer, thank you for considering our request.
Yeah.
And I've always very much appreciated that way of prayer also. And I've seen myself in okay, this is what I want. You know exactly what I need, and you know how to make both of those things coalesce. And so I think a part of the magic of prayer is one, just because I'm often very unconscious of what's going on internally. I'm often unconscious of my desires or my fears, and so part of the medicine of prayer is that I'm becoming conscious of oh, I actually want this. Oh, I actually don't want that, or I am looking for this, or I'm not looking for that, or I'm averse to that. There's a medicine in that awareness of what is otherwise unconscious, and then I can be again more fully present to the actual presence of God, to the awe and wonder. I can begin that process of surrender.
It reminds me of this concept I heard once that said, if you pray to God for patience, God will send you situations to practice patience. So he'll put you in bumper-to-bumper traffic. And then instead, why... I'm lamenting that I'm in traffic when actually I wanted patience, and here's an opportunity right in front of me to be patient, right? To cultivate and practice that patience within myself. And I think about this most saliently in my life when I realized that I had to end an 8-year relationship with a person I thought I was going to be with forever. We bought a house together, we last living Will and Testament together, everything. It was the real deal. I was so there for it, and I was chanting japa one day, and I just had this deep feeling of it's time. I have to leave this relationship, and I started sobbing. I had to accept that this was the plan in order for me to continue forward with my spiritual growth. There was a lot of roadblocks in the way in this relationship, and I was so sad. My entire life was about to be upheaved. I could just see the writing on the wall. And so I went to my deities, and I got on my hands and knees, and I just begged them, not that I didn't have to do it or to change the relationship or to change my ex or anything like that, but that if I was going to have to do it, then I need your help to do it with love and with grace. And I just begged for their help to do it with love and with grace. And this is a wild story. So then I went to my partner a couple days later. We sat down for the conversation that kicked off the breakup period. And I was like, listen, we have to do this. And he was like, I agree, we're in the same place, and if we're going to do it, I want to do it with love and with grace. And my jaw hit the floor that he said that exact phrase in that exact way. And then I was like, Krishna, there he is. Yeah. There he is, helping usher this in with love and with grace, even though this is the most painful thing I've been through. And then it was in a year, almost the better part of a year-long emotional separation leading into the physical separation. And at every point in the way, I started appreciating and noticing when there was love and when there was grace in the separation. And it allowed me to practice that sort of love in separation in that way. And so I think like in my attitude, I could have been angry with Krishna or with the situation, and being forced to like uproot my entire life basically, that I've been growing with this person for 8 years, but something in me just realized that I was like, no, I know that this is the plan, and I'm going to need your help with it every step of the way. And I honestly, like, I look back at it and I feel so carried through the entire thing, even down to like the apartment that I found that came, like, this guy just like left and was like, you can have everything in the apartment, and I like inherited like furniture and dishes and plates. So then when we like broke up and physically separated, we didn't have any arguments over who gets the couch or who gets the coffee table, and it was the smoothest like breakup. And I was like, wow, this is also Krishna. Like, I'm really grateful for this, And so it reminds me of that when we're like going through the strife, that like maybe it's not about the strife, but the opportunity to practice what we have been requesting or wanting or seeking. And so if I'm requesting a deeper relationship with Krishna, then he disappears, and then all of a sudden here's my opportunity to really deepen the relationship instead of it being just given to me in the tasting that I've had up until that point.
Yeah.
So to me it feels like a matter of perspective, right? Like what perspective am I going to take on this? Am I going to take the victim mentality of like, why are you doing this to me? Why do I have to break up with my boyfriend? Can't you just like change him and make it all work, Versus like, okay, like, I'll surrender to this, but like, I need your help in it, because like, this is going to be tough, this is going to be really hard. So, I don't know, and I know that's not a one-to-one like parallel with anything that has been brought up. I think the mood of it, though, is really itching to get out of me. So I wanted to offer that as, a perspective that I've been trying to actively adopt, literally as recently as like within the last month, because it's that fresh right now. So.
Thank you. That's really amazing to hear, and it's very faith-affirming. And yeah, I think that's another reason I'm so compelled by circle work, is because the whole rehearsal aspect is basically so that we may be in the right space when things like that happen, and move in that direction. Because I think you're right. I absolutely agree with you, and I have major faith in that. I also know that Krishna's just damn expert at throwing you off your game. And part of his game is just pulling the rug in the way that gets you flustered. I've had recent experiences where it was like, I've been through some things that I sailed through with my faith that were devastating, and still he was just expert enough to be like, ching. It's like, I just imagine like fencing. Never done it, but I just imagine like somebody with a sword just having the perfect technique and then bing, and getting you right in the spot, like the only open weakness that you have. And this sounds sadistic, but that's what God's good at. So he's really good at like finding that one spot. You're like, it's good, it's working, everything's good, and then he's like, oh yeah, what about this one? And you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was there. And that's like, Yasyaham Anagarnami Hadesheta Dhanam Shanai, because his job is to throw us off our game. Because our game is our problem. He does gradually, but sometimes gradually just means he waits a long time, and then all of a sudden, boom. Sure, yeah. Shanai, it's gradually. But it's also
gradual for him, it's not gradual for us.
That's so, yeah. Not a rebuttal, just also what I feel.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you sharing that, and it's faith-affirming. And congratulations also, because that's freaking beautiful, too, that worked out that way.
It's very fortunate. Like, I know that's not the norm, and I'm not trying to put it forth as that being the norm.
I think you're right, though, it can be, and we really want to strive to cultivate that vision. So, no discouragement either. I want that, man. I want that. Kobe? This won't reach.
Can we maybe open some of the windows? Just get some air flow.
This one's still?
We get closer to this, the covered ones, for sure.
I just wanted to say thank you and everyone in the circle. I felt a mirror. There was a mirror in front of my face. And I guess it's left me with the same quest I've had for a long time, the continued quest of who am I in this journey, but also where am I and what am I doing? In the sense of my friends know I own a yoga studio and doing this work. But if I don't find, I'm feeling a little raw. If I don't find some raw. I don't find an answer. Not so much to the who am I, but what am I doing? Where is home? That reflects to my work, my service.
Yeah.
Where am I taking people?
Yeah.
I feel a bit lost in where am I taking people? How am I guiding people if I don't even know where home base is? We don't know where home base is anymore. And that's I would love some insight, please. Well, both of you.
Asking the wandering sannyasi.
Asking
the wandering sannyasi.
There's no base. There's hope.
Every 3 days it changes.
Someone moved home base.
The only faith that I have in as far as a home is a metaphysical home base at the center of a circle. That's what I genuinely believe in now, is that the center, one, we have to establish a center for God to occupy so that we can just orient ourselves right, because that's the ontological problem of the world, is we're listless looking for something that's substantial. We're roaming around and we're looking for something that we can say, this is home, and I can sit in front of it and be okay, and then it disappears. And then we're sad. And the crazy thing is that happens in spiritual life. We think we found home 5 times in a row. We think, now I've got it in Krishna consciousness. I think, now I've got it in Krishna consciousness. I can rest easy. And then that little thing that God does, He says, that's not me either. That's not home either. And so the only answer I have is that I have faith that with a group of people that intentionally want to find home, coming together with them and centering ourselves on that desire to find home, and then saying, home, we're going to constellate around you, please be here, that we can get closer and closer and find it. And that's the only thing that I really believe with certainty right now. And that's going to be my practice, and I'll do it a little bit alone, but I think that that's Sankirtan, and that's what we have to do. And I think that we're going to be lost until we're found in that way. So, I don't know if that helps. It's rather short, but I feel that in my bones, and I'm going to do things to chase after that and look for people that also want to do that. So, let's freaking do it.
Maharaj, where's home base?
That's one of the questions people ask me the most, right? What's your basis, Maharaj? I have to go beyond the geographical to reply to that question accurately. I was fascinated with what Ujjvala was saying regarding the center.
Resonating, appreciating.
Both. So some time ago we were saying, okay, the center is God, but also we can say God is not different from love, and love by nature is unconditional. So the center of reality is unconditional love. That's the only certainty. We're talking in Alatra that the only certainty is that we have Krishna's unconditional love. Everything else is uncertain. But having that certainty in place, we can coexist with all the other things being uncertain. But we have to enter into that space to locate ourselves around that center. And the center of reality is God, which is love, which is unconditional. And that's always coming. And everything else may be uncertain, maybe not everything, but at times it feels everything else is uncertain. I think, at least personally, I've gone through a few of those situations, like I told you today, which I have to redefine myself from tip to toe, basically. Really, the question of who am I happens a few times. It's not just who am I? Oh, I'm a spiritual soul, eternal servant of Krishna. Next question. Yeah, for now, next question. But see you in a few weeks. You will ask the same question over and over again. That's what Sanatana Goswami asked Mahaprabhu. Who am I? And that's Sanatana Goswami. There's place to ask those questions as many times as we need. So, who am I? What's my position, my service, my identity? And at times you feel that's safe, that's clear, and at times it needs to be deconstructed for you to die and be reborn in this lifetime. And we need to go through those fires a few times. And again, sometimes we may spend some days or some seasons without certainty, without even perceiving meaning and purpose, although in theory we know there is inherent purpose in reality, but I'm not perceiving it.
Yeah.
You have to be vulnerable enough to recognize it. Today was a day without meaning. I mean, there is meaning, but I couldn't draw it from. And we have to, even in that context, have this foundational trust that there's one certainty among everything else being uncertain. And of course, for us to navigate those fires of ordeal, as Ujjvala also said, we need to be. I mean, generally we cannot survive those waters by ourselves. We need circle, we need sangha, we need places where we can bring our case, and that will be received, that will be honored, that will be judged, that will be nourished. The very fact that we can voice our bewilderment and discouragement or whatever may be happening, it's in itself the beginning of the solution. So I would say that, even if we feel something like that, also try to understand this won't last forever. The fact that I feel that today and it feels like all-pervading doesn't mean that the whole of your life will be in that exact place. So one has to zoom out a little bit and remember it has not been always that way, it won't be always that way, but it needs to be that way today, and I have to learn my lesson here. And it's painful, but I mean, when pain comes, because bewilderment many times creates pain, and we sometimes want to leave that space quickly. We want to live somewhere else. We resist. But as the saying say, what you resist persists, right? So when pain comes, you need to sit with the pain enough till you draw your lesson from that situation, because at least that's my experience and the advice of the wise. Is the situation is disconcerting for us. It's not wrong. It doesn't need to be left. It's an invitation to go deeper in our trust of reality and trust the unfolding of reality and trust the processes of reality in which things may unfold in time. And as long as we're in safe space and safe circle, we can survive the unfolding, so to say. And there will be days that will be disconcerting, there's no meaning, and it's okay to allow ourselves to be in those days. It's okay. But sometimes we don't allow ourselves to be in those days. We are in total denial. This cannot be happening, this is wrong, Krishna is wrong, or I am wrong, something is wrong, this shouldn't be. I don't know. We may need to go through those days. And if we have presence and integrity and openness, in time we look back and realize, yeah, that was absolutely necessary. But again, many times proper sangha is what keeps us in context. And we can understand what's going on in the proper context, in the proper perimeter, and we don't decontextualize reality.
that I would like to say has not been there. This is the first group in my whole Krishna consciousness. I'm 51 years old, of experiencing so much, even as a child, in ISKCON, from gurus falling down, Ritwik, my mother's in Rhino, just so much. Then my own personal experience. And my own personal experience was where the heart lay, the same visual experiences laid in my different circles. But it's been, over 20 years since I left my first, no one in my whole life has bared witness to any of the different situations that I have confronted. No one has held that space. And let alone to hear so many people, I don't need that. Just hearing you was enough. It was a reciprocal experience. But these spaces, they're not there. And that pains my heart to know they're not there. They're not there in my life. I came here, now I feel like, wow, how did I land here? It really felt quite mystical. No coincidence Krishna took me here because he recognized I've been really stuck at home and in my space. And so I recognize that stuck is that haven't been able to testify grief completely from many different, it's not just one, but not having that, it's like feeling that, but then also recognizing this isn't out there. I've tried to create this in my community. I think Shannon and Ethan, but I don't feel that me, Ethan. I don't have that for me. I have to hold upright. I can't crumble. I can't show my vulnerability. You can't, not to this level. So that's a question, yes. Safe spaces, that sangha, it's like, it hurts that this isn't there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there is that solution. That's all. I recognize that is the importance, but I'm pained that there's many people like me, after 30 so many years, who had several of what every single one of you have had, who haven't had space to process and to grieve and to testify. And that's, we all just go to the therapist, but they don't understand the frame of references of being a devotee. It's like, we're just reading all these books to get some support, and that's, I think, those books have given us those supports. It could be Richard Rohr, Carl Jung, or different persons that I have also leaned into because I haven't found that in our Sangha, in our Sankirtan. In our Sankirtan, there's very few, bubbling, volcanic Sankirtans. So I'm grateful. I'm paining still, because that isn't there. I pain for all those people out there. I pain for when I go back. And it's an open wound. Thanks. Sorry, that was a joke.
That's good.
And we you were mentioning also, Gopi, before, that you were asking who am I in terms of what's my service and all the things, and you at the same time are painting by seeing a lack of this type of spaces and circles. So probably I'm not here giving you service. I'm just saying probably all this is a reply to that question in terms of, okay, so if we see a lack of this, if we are seeing it, we have to commit to what we are seeing. So we are being shown. So probably the reply is, hey, maybe there's a service for you there. Not only for you, of course, for each of us. In our own way, in our own little way. Again, we are not coming down here to change the world, but I cannot either remain there just lamenting that there are no more of these things while I have an experience of that, and I can try to extend that gift to others as much as I can while receiving that, because we need to receive and we need to give both. just a reflection in connection to what you were saying. I think that at least personally, the way to redeem that pain, and of course you may need to grieve and have your pain as long as you may need, but also way to make full circle is to commit to the lack that you are perceiving and offer yourself in service for those who need it, which are so many.
Because I thought I had healed, but hearing those wounds opened again. They opened again. My own wounds opened from your wounds.
Beautiful.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know how much more time we have. I don't want to interrupt the...
8 o'clock.
And that means?
I don't know.
I didn't ask what time it was. I said I don't know how much time we have.
I didn't say anything. I've
You replied very cryptically. Baruch Shabbat.
That is
I just get a time.
We're close to those, but there's a few other.
Okay, I just want to say one thing on that topic is the most powerful thing and the only really required thing to start something like that, and I take this because it's the way I got inspired to start a little circle, is to just come and be vulnerable at the circle. I believe that people are broken open by seeing other people break open a bit, and so yeah, I think it's the need of the hour. I really agree with what you said. I grieve for the fact that there aren't many places for people. Like I said, I think it's the modern epidemic. I mean, I believe this whole thing is really what we're sad over is that we don't have villages. We're sad because we don't have 15 people that have known us since we were born, and we're just there for everything we went through our entire lives, and just know us. Like, we shouldn't even be having to have these conversations. We shouldn't have to be sitting and saying our whole life story in front of a group of people that don't already know it. We are meant to live in a village. We're meant to live in the circle that we were born into and to worship in that. But the beautiful thing is that at least whatever optimist is in me, I see hope in the fact that people are lit on fire by other people's vulnerabilities. And so it actually doesn't require... There does need to be a little bit of like, we'll keep some order to the chaos and to make sure that things don't get nasty, that people don't start criticizing people. But it's really what it requires is somebody courageous enough to be vulnerable and just start saying, this is where I'm at. Because then everybody goes, oh my God, I can say where I'm at. They just said where they're at. I've been wanting to say where I'm at for 30 years, a decade. A decade I've wanted to say where I'm at, and I thought everybody would hurt me, but I don't want to hurt this person. When they said where they're at, I'm inspired by that, and then that just lights this fire. Now, I was thinking about this when you were bringing up the chapter from the Rasa Lila that you brought up, that the gopis are expressing their different sentiments, and they're expressing, it looks like it could be anger, and it looks like they could dislike Krishna, but actually there's this sacred empathy that happens where, as you also expressed earlier, we see each other in each other's story. We see ourselves in each other's stories. And so we just are like, oh my God, I get that. I get that. And we can grow closer. So I at least to keep me sleeping at night and hopeful for the future, I think that we can recreate villages by being vulnerable and by holding space for each other. And I think that that's the necessity. So if you feel that grief, that it's not there, then please do it. Please do it. Please try to make a little village. As you were telling me earlier, that it's like, I don't know what I'm leading people. You said that also here, and I don't know what I'm leading people into. And yeah, that's definitely also the tone of the times. It's like, who the hell do I send these people to? Where are they going to go? Am I supposed to give them diksha? What am I supposed to do? Like, what are we supposed to do? Well, at least we can try to create a vulnerable, open family and then worship from there. And I think that's the only thing that we can do. It's the only thing we can do. Because I certainly can't just set him off with a sadhana and leave him alone and tell him that Krishna will figure it out. Because he might. Yeah, I just don't believe in that stuff anymore. thank you for your vulnerability, and
Amen.
please forgive my impetuousness. We might, I don't know if we'll get that far.
It's a long call. It's
Might have to get closer.
caught up in that hill.
I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm going to almost unbearable amount of thoughts. But I just wanted to open by taking a bit of an appreciation for what you, Maharaj, have said all this weekend and through your podcast about Tadatmya, and it being the need of the hour, as Ujjvala so well puts it. And it makes me think a lot of, we talked about the story from Bhagavatam that helps us with grief. The story from the Bhagavatam that helps me with grief is the story of Shiva and Sati. A tragic tale of woe. But we find that, in the Shakta texts, it's very elaborately told. And a very elaborate description of Lord Shiva's grief. We hear a lot, almost in a kind of, semi-comical way in the Bhagavatam text about the destruction of the sacrifice. And the destruction of the sacrifice, in many ways, is the destruction of a world, of a way we've conceived the world to be, of a circle that we've set up. A yajna is a circle, right? And this gets broken, and it makes me think of so many things that have happened in the ISKCON community, have happened in the world. It makes me think of the time, inconsequential but very valuable for me, the time that I've spent at the protesting campus. Where for so many people in the university system and the world system, Ma has left, auspiciousness has left, because we see the people that are dying and the people that are suffering. And so in this instance, when the doctor of sacrifice is destroyed, is the ultimate desecration and breaking of this new order that we thought we established. There's one of the things that, I spend way too much time going, and this gets into the past discussion from earlier today, I spend way too much time going through other people's Hare Krishna trauma and trying to make sense of everything that's happening, and it feels like, the one thing that I heard said that absolutely stinks is that ISKCON has tried in a really shitty way to save the world. But what happens in the story of Shiva and Sati is that seeing that Lord Shiva is in this colossal state of grief, not only for his wife, but for the world. She is the world. She's Devi, she's the world, she's all of us. And Vishnu sees this and he sees, oh my gosh, she's dancing so hard, he's going to destroy the world. This grief he cannot possibly handle alone, it's going to be too much for the universe. And so what he does is he takes Sati's body, which has been on Lord Shiva's back, and Lord Shiva is so detached. He's carrying a body, right? He's hugging this body, this thing that we're told is just nothing, right? And of course this is a philosophy, but that's there. And he takes her body and he cuts it up into pieces. And those pieces fall down and they become Kamakya and Bimala Devi and Katyayani Devi. And he's creating circles to redistribute this massive wound, this massive grief. Like we were talking about, sometimes a generation's duty is to grieve. And the need of the hour, he says, is Tadatmya. And the one thing about, Sankirtan that I've almost kind of had an existential crisis over is I have many friends who are, one of the things that have frustrated me to no end with the ISKCON movement is its relationship to social justice. It's big part of the reason why I went to the dark side and became a follower of Vivekananda. But that was for you, Sudhiri. But I've, in my interactions with my friends who are communists, who are on the front lines, who are doing work, who are very aware from the potential and very real collapse of our world in the way that we thought it was, environmentally, politically, socially, that we all have to face and we don't have a choice, right? It's there. In front, I was talking to Padmanabha Maharaj about Chinnamasta, who's holding the severed head saying, look, this is what's happening. And all of that's going on, and people are putting forth all this effort, and we're sitting here, and, of course, it's this huge esoteric thing. where, like, we only recognize the meaning of Sankirtan when we realize that what we are doing is bringing people into Tadatmya. We're bringing people into identification with Mahaprabhu and his associates, and ultimately, this ineffable Ras Lila, which we is the goal of our practice, that yet somehow we are not allowed to talk about, and that highest love comes all the way down, right, to the Harinam of the football game. And so, like, when I was sitting and I've always felt this sense, but when I felt disconnected from that, when I felt like I wasn't having Tadatmya in my Sangha life, I would, show up for Harinam, because, it's fun, it's a jolly good time, but inwardly I'm feeling like, okay, are we actually helping anybody? What are we actually doing to benefit? Is this just for me? Because if it's for me, is it musical or is it mystical? Right? And, and one thing when I was in that encampment, there was this palpable energy of, and I mean, politically, whatever, but there's this powerful energy of Tadatmya there. Constantly, this song is pouring forth through not just the protests, not just the songs, not just the dakpa dancing, not just the, reading the names of the children and the families who have been killed in Gaza, but in the strategizing, in the organizing, in keeping people's morale up, in distributing food. So much community is arising, and, I had a very deep existential crisis once when a friend asked me that question, kind of like, what benefit do you think we're bringing to people in the spiritual life? And, I kind of, through, exploration of this Tadatmya concept, I kind of found that answer is like, in the coming world, no matter what happens, we are actually doing what we're supposed to be doing. And we're in the circle is right where we are supposed to be. And I really appreciate your bringing out, both in your discussions about Mahaprabhu and about Advaita Acharya, and as well as your discussion with Richard Rohr about God's identification with the world's suffering, because this is Shiva. Like, I think of the in the Christian mystics, that when Julian of Norwich, medieval mystics, they talk about Christ's side wound. And when you see the side wound painted in the illuminated manuscripts, it looks like a yoga. It is. And as a Shakta person, I was very intrigued by this. But there's this whole meditation about Christ is the mother of our salvation. And the Greek word for what Christ is doing through the cross and through the resurrection is apokatastasis, or this idea that God is drawing through the creation, through the material energy, drawing all the world unto himself, as I believe the Psalms say. And the side wound of Christ, of Mother Christ, is regarded as the channel that births our salvation. Again, the grief and the love are two opposite sides. I know, right? It's insane. But the and of course, Satsi and all of these pilgrimage places that get set up is the seeds for the worship of the honoring of Devi, the coming of Mother Parvati, and she already has all of these beautiful places to be worshipped. So putting that garland of grief back on a world that's been fractured and broken apart. Yeah, that's. I don't know if there's. I don't know. This probably should have been a question, but I have. Those were. I hope this was.
Thank you. It was not a question, it was a contribution. So thank you. Thank you. So, one more and we can conclude here.
Why are you asking me?
Ananda Murari, one more. We have time? You are the boss now.
Yes.
Yeah, Raja Rajagopal was raising his hand. We can conclude with this one.
I don't think I can read.
Okay.
So, in connection with what Anand Murari Guru and Ujjvala Guru were saying regarding prayer, I was remembering Gajendra Moksha prayers, where Gajendra starts with, I'm in this miserable condition, please help me get this crocodile off my foot. And as he goes through, as you go through the final verses, you see, he's saying, actually, I don't want the end of my material misery. What I really want is the opportunity to remember you, to glorify your holy name. And I was connecting it with the point that you both were making, how prayer is a way to clarify to ourselves what our ideal is and remove the unnecessary. I had a question, and the question was surrounding this. I'm trying to understand this pastime of where Krishna leaves the gopis. So, Jai Jagannath Prabhu was saying that the gopis are enacting various pastimes when Krishna disappears, and kind of appreciating and encouraging each other. It kind of feels like, I'm trying to bring it to my level of understanding, that we need a sort of Sajatiya Sangha in which we all are going through similar patterns of grief, so that we can encourage each other when each one of us reminds each other. What if I'm not surrounded by Sajatiya, and I'm surrounded by those who are sincere, but in my observation, they're younger to me, like in terms of their maturity of bhakti. What if everyone else is sincere, but I know myself and I'm not sincere because I know what I do when I'm alone. So I wanted to know, in these two scenarios, when you're surrounded by those who are sincere but maybe younger to you, or when you are in Sajatiya but you feel that you are not sincere, then what does one do to allow the encouraging to happen?
So I'll reply the first part and Ujjvala replies the second.
Okay. As you wish.
So, yeah, I appreciate that you brought the connection between the gopis supporting each other in their madness, basically, but in the grief, in madness, and supporting, being there for each other and celebrating their grief in one way or another. Because at the end of the day, they are in separation from Krishna. And Rupa Goswami, when he describes Sadhu Sangha, he says, Swajatiya Svatavara Snigdha. And for me, if I have to take that literally, it's like, if those things are not there, I don't call that Sadhu Sangha.
Yeah.
What are the terms?
Sajatiya, which means like-minded. Svatavara, which means higher, like some higher thing is coming from that association. Not necessarily, I will say, always a person is higher, but something higher is coming through that person. And snigdasya, which means affectionate. So he says Sadhu Sangha, basically he says Sadhu Sangha means these three things. You take these three things out, you have to call it other way, and I will call it Asat Sangha. We were talking before coming, right? Prabhu says, Vaishnavir, what is this? Asat Sangha Tyaga Vaishnavachar. The behavior of the Vaishnava means to avoid Asat Sangha. We generally think, oh yeah, Mayavadis, atheists, these people, these are Asat Sangha. So no. Asat Sangha means basically, I'm not concerned for Sat. I'm not concerned for being honest and true and vulnerable and naked and transparent. We are not getting together in Sangha with that intention. That's a Satsanga. Mm-hmm. And that's more tricky because externally it seems like Satsanga. But if there's not Sat, there's not authenticity. Satsanga also means attachment. So Satsanga means attached to be honest. Attachment to honesty. That's Satsanga. We are getting together attached to that and to increase our attachment to be and remain honest. If that's the ethic, okay, we call it Satsanga. If that's not the ethic, we call it Asatsanga. Yeah. And that's another way of saying Snigdasya, Swatavar, and Swajatya. We are like-minded. We connect in this common interest. We are affectionate to each other, opening, receiving, giving ourselves. And that allows Svatavara, that allows a higher current to flow through all of us. Even if all of us are, as we were talking in Arkansas, all of us are Madhyam Bhaktas or even less, but there is full sincerity and openness, some Uttam current can express itself through that circle, Svatavara. So, so I will say that's... okay, so your question is, so what if I don't have that? Well, I will put it bluntly, you have to adapt your life in order to have that. You cannot not have that.
Yeah.
Because not having that equals to no life, basically. I mean, with this, please don't take that literally and just now, I don't know, cancel all your duties and just, okay, have Maharaj say. But somehow or other, we have to be creative in having that. Because not having that equals to what? What remains without that? That's the question. If I don't have that Sangha, which means Sadhu Sangha, means I'm depriving myself of Sadhu Sangha. And what am I without Sadhu Sangha? Bhakti comes from Sadhu Sangha. There's no Sadhu Sangha, there's no Bhakti, and there's no I. So that's not a pretty small thing. So we need to make adjustments, whatever they may be. I cannot tell that, but to preserve that connection. Whether it's 3D or for circumstances, it may be in 2 dimensions, in somewhere or another, but having that connection, having that current. Second part of the question.
I don't remember the second part because...
Like if he has the Swajatiya Sangha, but he had felt, I'm not sincere and I know what to do.
So that was actually... The fact that there were 2 parts of the question is the thing that appealed to me the most anyway. I think we have to find in ourselves... I guess I'll preface this with saying, we're completely alone. You're alone, and you have God. That's the only person, actually, that you have a direct connection with. And so if we look to other people first and only, we're never going to be able to find the right situation. So we find ourselves in this weird paradox where I need to worship God wholeheartedly and give myself completely. And I don't have the strength to do that. So I also need people who are courageous enough to do that, to be with. If you don't find yourself with any satsanga, I don't believe in the second part of the question, really. Because you are who you are. You're sincere in the very fact that you exist. You have the same birthright that every other living entity has. And you have a rational capacity right now where you're sitting in a room of people that you're here. You want to worship Krishna, right?
He's asking that question, which shows his sincerity.
Yeah, you're asking the question. So you can take the second part off. The second part doesn't really matter. Now, what I really want to speak to, though, is the fact that Sadhu Sangha is so important, and Sat Sangha is so important. We can say so much about that. You encapsulated that very nicely, Maharaj. That we need people next to us who are also trying to live towards the truth. But at the end of the day, they can't walk it for us. They cannot walk for us. It's a personal connection. That's the most confronting thing about all of this, is I can't sidestep it. There is no book. There is no detail. There's no person who can say, oh yeah, it's this, this, and this, and you do that. We're being invited to a personal walk with God. And that's scary. And we're looking for every reason not to do that, which is why we need to see other people that are just slightly interested in that. Because most of the world will confirm that, no, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. We can do this other thing. We'll have fun over here. And then we end up realizing, oh, that doesn't work either. That movement, that thing, whether it's the Hare Krishna movement or another one, that's also not substantial. So first we have to be trying to make the personal walk. And then we need to find other people who are also interested in that. And so if you don't find that, then Maharaj's answer is the perfect one. You owe it to you and to the people around you, and you owe it to your connection with God, that maybe where you're at, you could find that. Maybe you're exactly where you need to be. But your lesson may also be that after you exhaust those options, you can't find it, pack up and go. If it's too subtle and you can't figure it out, will you be okay with just being listless and being a zombie stuck in a place where your fire is doused constantly?